So we're repairing a bunch of different issues on my front door today. You can see here, got some damage there on my jamb and brick mold. I ordered a jam rot repair kit from Better Door that we're going to use on my door here. Comes with 8-inch pieces of FrameSaver door frames, left and right. That's getting when you open the box. If you see that logo right there, you know it's FrameSaver. Means it's going to be rot proof, backed for life, and we are going to install these. All right, so the first thing we're going to do, or what we're doing here today, is we're going to repair some rot on my door jamb. Mark's going to help me out here. Mark, tell me what you're about to do.
Okay, so in the end, what we're looking to do is replace the bottom 6 to 8 inches of the rotten jamb on that side, and then also over on this side. And also we'll be replacing the brick mold, which also has rot at the bottom. So the first step is we need to remove the door panel. Excellent here. Good. Bunch of the rotate. Okay, so what we'll do is we'll cut the caulking between the brick mold and the jamb, top to bottom. And recutting may be required as you start taking off the brick mold. And the idea here is to not pull out any wood slivers or pieces from the jamb, so to preserve it.
How do you know when you're done cutting?
Okay, so now we're done cutting.
What do people need to look for? How do they know they're done?
Basically, you've got to see if you have a score line in the inside corner between your your jamb edge and your brick mold edge. And then next is we take a small flat bar hammer, and starting at the bottom, we'll go into the corner where we cut the caulking. And you can see that the brick mold starts to separate. And then we'll just work our way up. And if you can get in a little bit closer, you can see when I move the brick mold where we slice the caulking. And what you want to do is work your way up slowly, not grabbing and pulling up from the bottom, but just slowly working your way up so you're not damaging any of the structure around the brick mold. This one actually came apart, so we'll put that aside. And we've got the doorbell wire, which we'll leave on the side. Again, the brick mold's separated. And the top piece might be a little bit tricky. We've got a miter corner between the side brick mold and the top. So I'll make sure to cut both the inside corner there and the outside corner. And it's common for a fastener or nail to be driven through the top of the side jamb brick mold into the header. So you gotta be careful to get that out while preserving the header piece. Okay.
There it is.
So that's one side. And you'll note over here the nails that have come through the top brick mold into the side. So we'll take a pair of wire snips and cut those off. So again, back up top, we'll snip those clean. And then any pieces that remain, we can hammer back in. Okay. So let's see what we got over here. We got some foam backer rod for insulation. We'll preserve that. And down the bottom we can see where we weren't fully sealed. And then you can see the jam starting to rot there. So good time
that's
for
common,
FrameSaver
right?
jam bottom repair.
And what's different about FrameSaver?
FrameSaver utilizes a top portion, which is standard wood, so it's easy to machine, nail, and repair. And then the bottom portion is a composite material, and it's rot-proof, lifetime guarantee. So at both the bottom of your side jams and the brick mold, FrameSaver is available, and you'll never have to worry about rot again.
Does it resist insects too?
It does.
Okay.
Yeah, insects, termites, critters. Okay. And then the next thing we'll do on the side is remove the weather strip from the inside, and we'll put that aside. Okay, now we'll repeat the process on the other side.
So this is what happens when you do not have FrameSaver. You can see the damage. Different insects were probably living in there, which is great. I'm ready.
Okay, so we've got our FrameSaver Jam Rot Repair pieces from Better Door. Thing to note is that there is a left and a right, and depending where they're in swing or out swing, they could be reversed from how you would install them. So the first thing to look for in these for proper orientation is that the top or upper end will actually have the wood grain pattern. So that's up. The bottom side will be dark brown, solid color, no wood grain pattern, and it could be almost totally painted like this one. So in this case, for this project, this is down, this end is up. The next thing you want to do is figure out which part is left and right. And if you put up against the jam, bottom side down, you'll see the jam steps down from here to here. The replacement piece steps down from here to here. And the same thing holds true for the other side. So that's the way to know that you've got the right pieces on the right side. And again, without having the composite non-rot portion at the bottom, you'll have the same problem again a few years down the road. So orientation is very important. Okay, so the first thing we're gonna do is measure from the bottom of the jam and make our cut for removing the old rotten section of the jam. And the FrameSaver replacement pieces come in 8-inch lengths. So we recommend cutting less than 8, maybe around 7 inches. And if there's any issue with the matchup, you can take this down a little bit more just to make sure that you've got the right match. So to do that, we'll take our tape, and it's probably easiest on this sill. We've got the sill that extends over to the side, so it's hard to see the front bottom edge of the jam. So you have to go from the inside and account for any flooring that you've got to measure up approximately 8 inches. Sorry, to measure up approximately 7 inches. So I can actually catch the bottom of the jam here, make my mark at 7. And I can use a combination square or speed square to make a straight line. And you do that across both the thin edge and the thick edge of the jam. Okay, so that's our cut line. As the rule says, measure twice, cut once. So we'll double check that we're at approximately 7 inches. Okay, and then we'll do the same thing on the other side. One thing to just consider is on the hinge jam to make sure that your lower hinge is above your cut line. Typically it will be for any door type, in swing or out swing. So in this case our mark is about 7 inches off the bottom of the jam, which gives us plenty of clearance to the bottom of the hinge. So just be careful that you're not lining up with the hinge for your cut. Okay, so we've made our mark to cut and remove the rotten bottom portion of the jam. So there are several ways to remove that. One could be a circular saw, another could be an oscillating tool. Today we'll demonstrate using a circular saw. And like with any power equipment, be careful, make sure the guards are there, use safety glasses, and be safe. So the jam itself measures about 1.25 inches thick. So you want to set your saw blade a little bit deeper than that, where it's 1 3/8 or 1.5 inches, but you should have no problem clearing the rough opening behind the jam. So to do that in the circular saw, most circular saws have, it'll be hard to see, but they have a guide for blade height here. So always set your blade height with your power tool unplugged. Once you're set and locked in place, you can double check and measure. Make sure you're at the correct location, which we are. So we're ready to cut. So when making the cut, we'll just kind of do a dry run here. We're gonna have to eyeball and align and cut through. And if you take your time, you'll make sure your cut is as straight as can be. And so the mating alignment with your replacement FrameSaver jam piece will match up as you expect it to. Okay. Get down close to the ground because the saw blade is actually too high in that orientation. So you've got to cut from this way. So we'll line up. Okay, so we've clean cut through the jam on this side, and we'll make our cut on the other side where we've got the saw out, and then we'll work on removing the rotten pieces. Okay, so now we've made our cut on both jams at the bottom, and then the next thing we want to do before we try and remove the rotten pieces is make sure that any fasteners or nails that are going through the jam into the rough opening are removed. So the recommended tool is a Sawzall. If you don't have that, potentially a pair of long snips, or possibly just hitting the fastener with some type of flat bar and hammer may do the trick. So I'll go up to the top of the cut and then work my way down. Okay. So we should be clear now to remove that piece, and we'll make the same cut on the other side. Okay, so now we've got our cuts made. Any fasteners holding the bottom of the jam into the rough opening have been cut through. And to get the jam piece out, there's a couple ways to do it. On this particular sill, we've got a horn which extends in front of the jam, so it won't allow us to slide the jam piece out. But also the jam is likely fastened into the end of the sill on the back side. And so it's hard, you can't really just pull the piece out. So what we're gonna actually do is using a chisel and hammer, split the jam piece and pull it out that way. To wedge out a little bit, but taking care not to split the wood that you're leaving behind. and just start taking it out piece by piece. And we'll take care of that insulation later. You can see the sills starting to get loose, and we'll take care of that if we need to. Okay, so it looks like our sills actually will come loose, so we'll take that out. Maybe try in one piece on this side. Okay, so next what we're going to do is measure our FrameSaver repair piece to fit up with the angle on the sill. And what we'll have to do is actually cut off this portion of the bottom of the jam so it can overlap the sill and mate into the rough opening. So to do that, we first have to measure the height of the sill at both the back edge and the front edge of the thick part of the FrameSaver. And each sill may have a different angle, so measuring each time is important to do to make sure you've got the right cut and then the right mating line afterwards. So to do that, we recommend using a straight edge ruler and going up against the thin part of the upper part of the jam, slide down till it hits the rough opening bottom, and then measuring up the sill height at that portion. And then we'll do the same on the front, and that'll give us a mark here and here that will line up, and we'll cut off that portion. So I'll bring it into the sill, tight. And remember that mark. And then on the other side, I'll do the same thing. Carry it down. Okay, I've got my two numbers. And then I'll transfer my marks to the bottom portion. Remember, wood at the top, FrameSaver composite at the bottom. And the resulting line, when I cut off this material, will clear the sill and allow the new piece to be slid in from the outside. On outswing units, they'll have to slide in from the inside. Okay, so the method that we just showed was if you're not replacing your sill, how to measure the height for your cuts. If you're happen to replace your sill at the same time, what you can do is you can take your new sill, take your FrameSaver repair piece, line it up in the right orientation on each end, using a straight edge or a block, bring it back so we're square on the line and you're at the right position, and then make your mark. And then this is the part we'll remove. Next we're gonna make the tenon cut on the bottom of the FrameSaver jam replacement piece, both left and right. I've got my line marked here, and this is this portion that we'll be taking off. So the first thing we'll do is actually, there's two methods we'll actually show. We'll show by circular saw and also by a chop saw. So first method with the circular saw is to lay the piece down on a sawhorse, anchor it down with one screw. And I put the screw right where the weather strip will go, so it'll be hidden when we're done. Next we take our circular saw, which is unplugged for safety, and we set the depth of our blade to 1/2 inch. And that 1/2 inch is the distance from this surface to this surface. So when we do make our cut through there, we won't be cutting through the exposed part of the jamb. I'll take my second piece, which we haven't cut yet, and place it here to act as a support for the base plate of the circular saw. So, got safety glasses, earplugs, and we'll plug in the saw and make our cut. And we'll make one cut along that line. And in this case, you have to carefully line up and then watch as your blade goes through. So we've got our first cut made. It's deep enough because it barely hit this surface. And now we'll take out this material and this material with a hand chisel. Okay, so now we've got our piece with our first cut. We'll take our other piece and we'll line the bottom with the thin edge of the jamb and create a line. And then we'll rotate it and create a line on the other side. So it gives us a guide on the material that we need to take out. So once we've got that in place, we'll score both this edge and the bottom with a chisel, and the flat part will be towards the material we keep. Line up. And then we'll do the same thing on the bottom.
Solid.
I'll just go back over it. It wasn't heavy enough. And so we've scored both the bottom and the edge. Okay, now we've got our score marks. We'll actually make cuts through to remove the material. So starting at the bottom, towards one edge, we'll knock down a little ways, and I'll keep working across, not trying to cut all the way through, but just partially through. And then next what you'll see is that we've cut off the largest chunk of material. So next we'll take the chisel, and just to make sure we've got one smooth plane, we'll chisel off the material that didn't smoothly cut through initially. And then we end up with is the cut that you need. So the alternate method for cutting the tenon is to actually use a chop saw. You can either use a straight chop saw or a sliding saw. When you do that, what you first got to do is adjust the blade angle to line up with that line. And normally at most thresholds, the angle is 5 or 6 degrees. So you can kind of preset at 5 degrees, which I've already done. Bring your blade down and make sure that you're in line. This side, you can see it. If you need to adjust, you can adjust your table to line up. So once your blade's aligned with your angle cut, what you want to do is leave the line and cut on this side, so you're not cutting too high on your cut. Another thing to consider is how far the part sits out from the stop. In some cases, a 1/2 inch shim may help, so your blade is cutting through the material from front to back, but not cutting too far into the rabbet portion. So we'll set that up. And I'll make that cut. And what I've done on that cut is I brought the blade down to where I just see it hitting the base material, or the bottom right there. And now we'll do like we did before, using the same process with the chisel, mark, and then we'll cut out this material. Okay, so in the case where we're replacing both the sill and the jam bottoms, we'll take our new sill, also available from Better Door. We'll measure the length of our existing sill and then cut the new sill to the same length. Once that's done, it's recommended that you line up the cut FrameSaver repair piece, go back here, aligning the thin edge of the jam with the back surface of the sill, and then actually drilling 3 pilot holes through the composite material, through the jam and into the sill, and then joining that on both ends, and then we'll get a sub-assembly that we can slide into our opening. Okay, so now before we put our new sill in with the, we didn't talk about this, did we? Sorry. So the second option we talked about is actually installing a new sill with the FrameSaver repair pieces already attached. So we've pre-drilled our holes, we've screwed in through the end of the jam on each side, and we've got a sub-assembly ready to go. And before I place it into the opening, we want to put a couple beads of caulk down on our subfloor. The thing to note is that because we're replacing this and the fit's tight, some of the caulk may be slid back, so we have to clean that off after we get the sill in place. And then we'll probably caulk underneath in this joint to make sure we get a good weather-tight seal. And I failed to mention that, of course, we swept clean the subfloor to maximize the adhesion with our caulking and up to the sill. Okay. And we'll go from opening to opening side. Okay. So now once that's done, from the outside, we'll line up our sill and bring it into place. May need a little help here. What that does is, using a flat piece of wood or something, it'll line up the outside edges to give us a starting point. And there's not much caulk squeeze out in the back here, so we should have enough between the sill and the subfloor to give us a good seal. So like we did earlier, if we're just replacing the jam piece and not the sill, we'll put our shims between the rough opening at the joint at the top. So we're flush and it feels tight. A little too much.
Straight edge up and down.
So first I'll work in and out. And I'll do that on each side. Same as the other side, we'll shim till our faces are flush. We'll get that roughly positioned. Okay, looks good. All squared up inside and on our edges. And now we'll shim at the bottom. That way we'll keep the sill centered and in position. And those you just have to put in snugly because you feel that the sill will hold you in place.
Oh, darn. Oh.
Okay. So we'll double check before we set our fasteners in place that our sill is back. That our jambs are flush. Okay, so we've got our new threshold in place. We've got shims at the upper joint and also at the bottom. So the new parts are inserted, they're centered, and they're supported in the back. Next what we'll do is we'll pre-drill 2 screw holes, one in the thick part of each jamb at the top through the wood portion, and one through the composite portion at the bottom. And we'll use 2.5-inch screws to secure that in place through the jamb, through the shims, into the rough opening. And we'll target getting the screws through the shims. And pre-drilling is critical, so we don't split the wood since we're near the end. Then also in the FrameSaver composite, pre-drilling is necessary because the material is a little bit harder than wood. It can be drilled and cut, but pre-drilling is recommended. Your shim moves a little bit, just put it back in place. And then here we'll go right behind where the weather strip is. Okay. Now earlier when we secured the bottom of the jamb that we left in place, we did screw through the fat part, which is really kind of the best place to secure it. So that hole will have to be covered before being painted, and that's why we put a second hole in the repair product. So those two can be worked on at the same time. Just again, making sure we're aligned. And you'll note, we'll may have to work on the joint here, so that's adjusting the shims. But you'll note too, there may be a gap, but again, that'll be fixed with repair putty, sanding, and then final painting. So we'll do the other side at the top. And then down at the bottom, final 2. Okay, so we have finished our basic installation. We've got our new FrameSaver rot-proof jamb bottoms in place, connected to or joined up with our existing jamb pieces. New threshold. We're secured in place. We're shimmed. We've cut the shims off flush. So next what we've got to do is basically finish up the job. So we'll fill the joints in with interior/exterior plastic wood. We'll put the interior casing on. We will put some expanding foam insulation where needed. And then we will do flashing tape and then the brick mold to finish up the job. Put the door panel back on, we're ready to go. follow the manufacturer's instructions for completing your putty repair. One thing you want to be careful of is to not get putty in the weather strip slot in the back of the jam on either side. Otherwise it'll interfere with proper replacement of the weather strip. And once this is dried and filled in, you can either use a sanding block or an orbital sander to blend the two surfaces together and add more putty as needed to smooth out your joint. Okay. So we'll replace the jam. There is no insulation between the back of the jam and the rough opening, so we'll do some expanding foam in there. The rest of the joint has been filled with backer rods, so that's good to go. Okay, the other side here. Next piece is to replace the support board for the sill. In this case, since we're on a concrete slab, what we'll have to do is take some construction adhesive, apply it to the back, and then we'll bring it in and support the sill back in place. This is wider than we need, so we'll peel, stick, and then cut. But actually, maybe what we'll do is I don't know what we'll do. Trim first. We'll peel, stick, and cut. Okay, so I've attached it to the siding first. Now I'll attach it to the jam. And cut it to the right width. Same on the other side. Yeah. Don't get the middle one.
Alright, hold on.
Hang on, bring your finger up. Okay, there you go.
Yep. And if you'll push that top in real hard, you're almost there. There it is.
One final point to caulk is between where the bottom of the new replacement jam and brick mold meet the sill. And you can just put a light bead on there. Don't have to tool it in. It'll set up. It'll seal the joint between the frame and the sill, helping to keep water out.
Bye-bye, Rot.
Hello, FrameSaver.